Why is this boss not dying? His health is going down way too slow. We gotta be doing something wrong. So I pulled up a guide and, I see the problem. You're supposed to drag him onto the traps. So I said, get him on a trap. Nothing. The tank just keeps standing there, attacking the boss. Get him on a trap and I'll step on this, thinking that if I step on the pressure plate, it would activate the trap. But still, nothing. Man, put him on a trap. Oh my god, finally. Okay, listen, I'm still pretty new to Lord of the Rings Online, but it turns out this game is full of new players, so why? Well, I last played this game in 2024, and I was pretty critical of it, and I would say for good reason. I had quite a few complaints, which we'll be going over again in this video, because a lot of you told me that I was wrong. First, and by far the worst, was the lag. The rubber banding, the constant connection issues, it made the game borderline unplayable at times. It completely ruined the experience. Second was inventory space and monetization. My bags were constantly full of junk, vendoring became a chore, and of course the solution was just to buy more space with real money. And third, the user interface. It felt clunky, unintuitive, and honestly it was just off-putting right from the start. Now, I'm not saying all of this has been completely fixed. We are still dealing with standing stone games, unfortunately, and a monetization model that hasn't exactly changed overnight. But with all that in mind, I'm impressed. But first, let me make some money, because being an MMO YouTuber in the big 2026 doesn't necessarily pay the bills. Speaking of massive worlds you can lose yourself in, today's video is sponsored by Arknight's Enfield, a real-time 3D strategy RPG where you play as the Administrator on the planet Talos 2. And your job is basically to explore it, defend it, and build factories on it. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Combat is real-time with a squad of 4 operators, and there are 26 playable operators right now, each with their own class and rhythm. So team building actually feels like a puzzle instead of just figuring out who hits the hardest. One of the single coolest parts about this game is the AIC, or the Automated Industry Complex, where you can fully create an automated production line, pumping out gear and resources while you're off fighting bosses. The reason I'm talking about it now is the new update at the Wake of Spring, which just dropped and pushes the Wu Ling story into a major turning point. It adds a new 6-star operator, Zhuang Fengyi, built around fast electric-based damage. There's a new boss, Neferith, who's designed as a multi-phase fight with 2 forms that forces you to adapt mid-battle. Honestly, this fight looks amazing, and I can imagine it's going to be quite the challenge. There's also new regions like the Marker Stone and the Test Area with more exploration and rebuilding. This update also includes a free monthly pass and extra rewards just for logging in. So Arknight's Enfield is free on PlayStation 5, PC, and mobile. The At the Wake of Spring update is live as of April 17th, so make sure to click the link in the description as well as the pinned comment and go check it out now. And a huge thanks again to Arknight's Enfield for sponsoring today's video. So if this game is actually full of new players, I wanted to see what that experience looks like from the very beginning. Because if LOTRO is still pulling new players in 2026, something has clearly changed. Last time I played a pretty typical character for me, a champion, but this time I wanted to try something different, something a little out of my comfort zone. Lord of the Rings has a ton of cool options for classes, and one that stood out to me in particular was the Minstrel, a healing DPS hybrid who rips through enemies with the use of nothing but his pure musical talent. Now, I decided to be an elf because I wanted the name Elvish Presley, but unfortunately that didn't work, so I had to settle for Cord of the Rings. Because I chose to be an elf, I started in Elden Luin, and standing directly in front of me was Elrond. Bro, is this 7 abilities off the rip? Okay, I need to read these. So the Minstrel is actually one of the most unique takes on Bard that I've ever seen. You've got different stances that completely change how your skills work and even how they look. There's DPS and healing and a more neutral stance. I'm already glad I stepped out of my comfort zone because this is genuinely really cool. And honestly, thinking back to my first time playing Lord of the Rings Online, I just didn't have the same MMO experience that I do now. Back then, I would have described 7 abilities as bloat or just too much, too fast, but now this actually excites me. Anyway, the tutorial throws you straight into combat as you get raided by these dour hand dwarves, and cutting through these guys with pure musical damage was extremely satisfying. Then Elrond shows up, he takes down a troll, and this building collapses, and the next thing you know, you're teleported to Thorin's Gate, and this is basically where the real game begins. At this point, you're still kind of in tutorial mode, and there's still a ton to learn as you start leveling and questing, but I already picked up this new chess piece, which looks fucking sick. And yeah, I just ran around grabbing every quest I could find. At first, questing in Lord of the Rings feels like your typical MMO loop, but there's something a little bit different about it, and I'll get into more on that later. For now, I just ventured out. There's a certain old MMO aesthetic to LOTRO that leans heavily into this kind of cozy atmosphere in a way that newer games just can't even compare. The graphics aren't anything crazy, but there's something about them that actually made it easier for me to get immersed. A few more meandering quests through this snowy zone got me to level 4 and led me to Dwellin, and he had an easy quest which actually granted me my first mount, a horse. Hell yes. This is a pretty big deal in Lord of the Rings because travel isn't something the game just hands you. You're not constantly teleporting around the world like in most modern MMOs. You have to actually move and travel throughout the game, and yeah, it's slower. But I will say, after being away from these older games for a while, I realized you kind of lose something when everything is instant. I used to think long travel times were just artificial padding, but now I think the exact opposite. I think fast travel can be okay in certain scenarios, but the second that it takes away from the world, that's the second that you begin to lose something. And in Lord of the Rings, the world definitely feels massive. Anyway, I kept pushing through the early game, and around level 6, I jumped into my first story instance. These are the quests that actually move your main story forward, and honestly, they're some of the most fun parts of the game. After that, I got teleported to Salondim, which is this beautiful elvish coastal town that perfectly nails the Lord of the Rings vibe. That's something that LOTRO does really well. It respects the world that it's built on, and when you're working with an IP as well-revered and well-known as Lord of the Rings, that kind of authenticity is pretty important. But I will say, now is the moment where you start realizing that little difference in questing. Right off the bat, you're just picking up quest after quest, going from NPC to NPC. Anyone with a little ring above their head, yeah, you're talking to them. And at first, it just feels like a lot, like a ton of busy work. You've got 7 different objectives, there's 4 different mobs to kill, there's 15 items to collect, there's an NPC to defend, and once you actually head out, though, and start doing them, you realize that a lot of these quests are all happening in the same area and at the same time. So within a few minutes, you've already knocked out like 5 or 6 objectives without even really thinking about it. So I continued doing this from area to area. You start in Salondim, but you quickly make your way north to Dulond, but then you grab another 6, maybe 8 quests. I fought this boss and narrowly escaped as his cohorts chased me away, and then you hand in some of those, and you have follow-ups, and you finish those, and then you're on to the next area. I made my way to Thrassy's Lodge, another 6 to 8 quests. Sometimes a single NPC can give you like 4 or even 5 quests at a time. I went into the dwarven area of Howdlin and fought a dwarf boss named Starkath, and I'm doing an escort quest and getting new gear and tons of rewards, and eventually I made my way into Gondomon, a nearby city where I picked up literally like 12 quests at once. I'm a questaholic already. You can't stop questing. It is nonstop. It's go, go, go. And I'm kind of loving it because the rewards are feeling good. I finally finished all 12 of those quests, and I excitedly made my way back into town, giddy at the potential of all these rewards happening all at once. So I began turning them all in, quest after quest, reward after reward. And at this point, I'm thinking I've probably done like 70, maybe 75 quests already. I've got to be like level 25, right? 13. I'm level 13, and in Lord of the Rings Online terms, that's not even 10% of the way to max level because the max level is 160. And honestly, this is probably the point in my last video where I already started having quit moments. Back then, I was a little baby MMO player and I didn't really know what I wanted.
Lead me when I'm in the mood to be led.
I would have looked at this and thought, this is way too much. This is too much running around, too much questing, too much busy work, and not enough progress. Not enough of a fast track to endgame, which is all I really cared about at that time. But this time around, it felt completely different because instead of rushing through everything, I actually started paying attention to what I was doing. I was reading the quests, following along with the stories, whether they were big or small, and realizing how everything connects with the world. I'm still basically in my starting area, but I didn't realize just how rich it was the last time I played because I was only focused on one thing, which was progress. And that's just not how you enjoy an MMO like Lord of the Rings Online. Before, I wasn't really playing the game, I was trying to get past it. And in LOTRO, the world is the game. So once I stopped trying to rush to the destination, that's when I actually started enjoying myself. Eventually, I finished up everything in Arid Luin, and the game started pointing me towards Breland. I remembered this from my last playthrough, but back then I was playing a human, so Breland was basically right next to my starting area. I figured that would be the same deal here, but I was very wrong. First of all, I tried speaking with these stable masters. These are the closest thing that LOTRO has to true fast travel. It's not fast, but if you have other stable masters around the world unlocked, you can travel between them. It puts you on a horse and sends you on your merry way, and you can go make a coffee or tab out to watch whatever degenerate content your heart desires. However, in order to utilize stable masters, you first need to unlock them, which means you have to get there manually. So I hopped on my horse and looked at the map and breeze east. Right, we're going east. And what I thought was going to be a quick ride turned into this long, winding journey through Yondershire and into the Shire itself. These zones are also massive, and I swear this part just felt like it went on forever. But not in a bad way. I was riding through these quiet hills in the middle of the night. There were lanterns glowing in the distance and little hobbit homes tucked into the earth, and everything was just so cozy. Just the sound of my horse, the road stretching ahead, and the feeling like the world keeps going. And it's weird because a few years ago, I would have been extremely annoyed at how long this was taking, but now I'm just enjoying it. The music, the lighting, the atmosphere, the way the zones transition into each other, it actually feels like a journey. And by the time I finally started getting close to Breeland, it didn't feel like I had wasted my time getting there. It felt like I had actually traveled there. Not to mention, once you're actually in the zone of Breeland, you still have to travel all the way to the town of Bree, which is smack dab in the center of the zone, meaning you still have a ways to go. I'm not joking when I say this entire trip took between 20 and 30 minutes. But man, I miss feeling like I'm actually participating in a living, breathing, and most importantly, massive world. Now, Bree is pretty cool. It's basically the first real player hub you come across. You're going to be picking up quests in the Prancing Pony Inn, and you're going to be working on story quests with a guy named Strider, and eventually Gandalf as well.
No, stop it, Gandalf.
Now, one of the quests I picked up here was marked specifically for Minstrel, so it was a class quest. It was called A Song for Company, and I had to enter a dungeon with Leland here, and I serenaded some thieves. But what happened next is almost unbelievable. On my way back into town and back to the Prancing Pony Inn, I came across what could only be interpreted as a concert. I see 5 NPCs dressed in all white playing music on the lawn in front of about 30 players. I thought maybe this is some kind of world event, maybe you get a buff from this. Wait, those aren't NPCs. They are other minstrels, my class. They're all RPing and using instruments as emotes to play music as a band for all of these other players. They're literally just RPing. There is no buff or bonus you get from chilling here. They're just RPing as minstrels for the love of the game. And honestly, I found this unbelievably inspiring. What are the chances I'm on the way back from my minstrel class quest and I run into a group of legendary minstrel role players? Honestly, it was so beautiful, I could almost shed a tear. People playing games for fun in 2026. At this point, I'm fully bought in. I don't care about progression anymore. I don't care about hitting max level. I don't care about rushing into endgame raids, the hardest content. All of that is still there and it's still a valid goal, but it's not what I care about right now. What I care about is experiencing the world, meeting other players, just enjoying myself for once. Because somehow every game I play, I end up in this hyper-efficient mindset where I can't slow down, I can't relax, I can't even exist, even for a second, and here it finally clicked for me. Just relax. So with that lesson in mind, that's exactly what I did moving forward, as I leveled through the Breelands, making my way through story quests and interacting with the world. I loved the questing in an area called the Barrow Downs. There's a southern as well as a northern section, and you can easily spend a few hours questing through here. There's a ton of lore and hidden areas as well as a dungeon, which I guess I was too low level to even enter. This line of questing eventually led me into the Lone Lands. This is another positively massive zone. It looks rather bland on the outside, but it is chock-filled with interesting content and story if you just slow down enough to take a look. Most of the questing in this area begins at this inn, the Forsaken Inn, and stepping inside, I didn't quite realize what I was in for. Get it? In for? Okay, anyway, I picked up a few quests from here and went out and completed most of them. I was fairly close to hitting level 22 when I came across my first real group quest, an instance. An instance that takes place right here at the Forsaken Inn. Now, initially, I tried to solo the instance. I'm a minstrel, after all. It's one of the strongest solo classes in the game. I can heal, I can DPS, and nope, not happening. Okay, well, it seems like I'm gonna need some other players to help me with this. Luckily, Lord of the Rings Online has a group finder, and throughout my time playing, I've been noticing a ton of other people questing alongside me. Even in these low-level zones, it seems like the game is quite a bit more active than when I last played. And so because of that, I thought I might actually have a chance at forming a group. So I take a look at the interface and wow, someone else is already waiting to form a group for this exact instance. Perfect. Well, it wasn't quite that easy. It seems like the guy who made the original listing was AFK. At one point we had 6 members ready to take on this instance, though it didn't seem like any of them were actually in the area. I was rather confused, so I'm not gonna lie, I was all about ready to ditch this plan, but I went out and just started questing, and I kind of forgot that I had actually joined the listing at all. And then about 20 minutes later, while in the middle of trying to do something else, it popped. The Forsaken Inn. Oh boy. Now, this is a true classic MMO dungeon, and I was very lucky to be joined by 2 definitely new players. And they were both seemingly mute, as neither of them responded to me when I said ready to go, or any of the other times I tried talking during this experience. Now, you might be wondering, how do you know that they're new players? Well, you see, this instance, in its old MMO style and glory, has puzzles. For example, one of the first things that you're going to deal with is riddle doors. These are doors with riddles, and you solve them by using an emote. For example, the first door we came across read that 2 brothers live in 2 houses opposite sides of the hill. One brother shuts, then opens his blinds while the other brother stays still. My 2 group mates were seemingly stumped, but in my all-knowing wisdom, I knew this was obviously /wink. It worked. Yeah, I just looked it up online. There's like 30 potential riddles you can come across in this dungeon, all correlating to an emote, and this is not the only riddle door we would find. Anyway, we made it to the part where I died when I tried to solo it, and now with a group of 3, this part was fairly easy. However, the next portion of the dungeon requires you to maneuver around traps on the ground, these giant pressure plates, and as long as you and none of your group members step on them, you'll be fine. Honestly, it's really easy. It's easier than any platformer I've ever played. It's literally just don't step on the gray thing on the ground. Like, it's absurdly easy to just not step on these, but my poor group mates were running into issues. The problem is, if one player steps on one of the pressure plates, it activates all the traps and kills everyone stuck inside. But we persisted. After quite a few deaths, my 2 group mates made it through with me. The next hallway we had to deal with was rather interesting. There's a puzzle here where you can open up just a few of these coffers and deal with some of the skeletons. However, you can also just brute force it and open all of them. After what we've been through so far, I don't know what else I expected, so brute force it is. All of this culminates in this amazing cutscene where you drop down into a rushing torrent of water which races you towards the final room, the boss room.
Come and take what is rightfully mine.
Get on the traps, man. Oh my god, finally. All in all, the boss fight actually took like 15 minutes, but this was such a genuine first-time experience. I'll probably remember this forever. It felt like doing Dead Mines for the first time in 2005. All in all, I continued questing through the Lone Lands. I got upwards of level 28, and I'll be completely honest, the progression slows down immensely in Lord of the Rings Online. It was starting to take hours per each level, and that's another thing we've truly lost in the modern MMO space. It's just this slow, methodic approach to leveling, where leveling actually makes up the majority of your experience with the game. The funny thing is, a lot of the complaints that I had last time, they're either gone or I just didn't even notice them this time. The servers feel fine. I barely ran into any lag at all. They upgraded the servers to 64-bit after the last time I played. Inventory used to drive me insane, but now there's a pending loot system, and it's just not really a problem anymore. And yeah, the user interface, it can still be a little clunky in places, but once you spend time with it, you can actually make it work the way you want. But the most important thing I realized is I was completely wrong in my overall verdict about Lord of the Rings Online. It's a much better game than I remembered, but I don't think it's actually because they fixed the game or changed it in some massive way. I don't think it's the game that changed. I think it's me. Anyway, I sincerely cannot wait to continue playing more Lord of the Rings Online. It might genuinely become my main not working MMO, the thing that I'm playing in my free time, which is high praise coming from me. Anyway, folks, if you really enjoyed the video, a like, a comment, a sub, those things help a bunch, and I will catch you all in the next one. Later.